You know what's fascinating? Buddhism is often labeled as one of the world's major religions. But what if that fundamental assumption is completely wrong? Today, we're exploring how one of humanity's oldest wisdom traditions might actually be more like an early form of psychological science.
That's such an intriguing perspective, especially considering that nearly 500 million people worldwide identify as Buddhist. Though, from what I understand, the Buddha himself would have rejected that label entirely.
Exactly right. And here's what's really mind-blowing. When you look at the historical records, the Buddha never set out to create a religion at all. He was more like an ancient researcher, conducting what we might call today a thorough investigation into the nature of human suffering and consciousness.
Well, that certainly challenges the common perception. So, what was he actually trying to do if not establish a religious tradition?
You know, it's fascinating. He was essentially developing an empirical method for understanding the mind, about 2,500 years before modern psychology emerged. He identified three fundamental characteristics of existence that anyone can verify through direct observation.
Hmm, that sounds more like scientific principles than religious doctrine. What are these characteristics?
The first one is called anicca, the observation that everything is in constant flux. Recent neuroscience studies have shown our brains process about 11 million bits of information every second, but we're only consciously aware of about 40 bits. Everything is constantly changing, even when we don't notice it.
That's incredible. And it really drives home how our perception of stability is more of an illusion than reality.
And that leads directly to the second principle. Dukkha, which neuroscientists now understand, is linked to how our brains process disappointment. Studies show that the same neural networks activate whether we're experiencing physical pain or the psychological pain of things not meeting our expectations.
You know, that reminds me of recent research showing how social media triggers these same pain networks when we don't get the likes or validation we're expecting. It's like ancient wisdom meeting modern technology.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. The third principle, anattā, suggests there's no permanent self running the show. Modern neuroscience is backing this up too. Studies using MRI scans show that what we think of as our self is actually a complex network of neural processes working together.
That's fascinating how modern science is validating these ancient observations. Though I imagine many people find that idea pretty unsettling.
Well, here's the thing. Research shows that people who understand and accept these principles actually report higher levels of psychological well-being. A 2019 study found that regular meditation practice based on these insights led to a 43% reduction in anxiety symptoms.
So essentially, what we're talking about is more like an early form of psychological research than a belief system.
Precisely. And you know what's really interesting? Major research institutions like Harvard and Stanford are now studying these practices not as religious rituals, but as tools for understanding consciousness and improving mental health.
That really puts things in a different light. It makes me think about how many people might benefit from these insights if they understood that they don't have to become Buddhist to explore them.
And that's really the key point. These aren't Buddhist truths. They're just observations about reality that anyone can verify. It's like gravity. You don't need to believe in it for it to work. You just need to understand how it operates.
That's such a clear way of putting it. So we're really talking about a methodology for understanding our minds rather than a system of beliefs.
Exactly. And here's what makes this so relevant today. Studies show that about 40% of Americans report feeling more anxious than they did a year ago. These ancient insights, combined with modern scientific understanding, might offer some practical solutions.
Well, this certainly gives us a lot to think about. It's amazing how something so often misunderstood as just another religion might actually be one of humanity's earliest attempts at systematic psychological research.
And that's really what we hope people take away from this conversation. These aren't mystical beliefs requiring faith, but practical tools for understanding how our minds work. Whether you're religious or not, these insights are available to anyone willing to look closely at their own experience. Buddhism is not a religion, it is reality. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, found the universal truths 2,500 years ago did not keep them within himself. He compassionately preached these truths and invited all to come and see. For those who can think inwardly, these truths are visible to anyone who looks honestly. You don't need faith. You don't need a label. You only need awareness. So remember this clearly. Buddhism is not something to believe in. It is something to understand. When you observe your breath, your thoughts, your emotions, you are not practicing a religion. You are observing reality, and that understanding leads to freedom. May all beings see this truth. May all beings be free from suffering.